It was just a few days into the year 1998 when the Astronauts Battalion, the People's Liberation Army, was founded. Although the battalion consisted of just 14 people, the importance of their mission was such that they attracted the attention of the entire world. In 1996, the Chinese Air Force was assigned a secret task to select potential astronauts from among its serving fighter pilots.
空军有一个文件传到我们各部队，招航天员体检，那个时候才相信这是真的，而且我自己也感到我的机会来临了。
After a thorough examination of all the personal files, a total of 1,500 pilots were put forward for preliminary selection. In other words, for clinical and psychological testing. First, though, they had to meet certain basic physical requirements and had to be between 160 and 172 centimeters in height, 55 to 70 kilograms in weight, and 25 to 35 years in age. And they all had to have logged a minimum flight time of 600 hours. Space flight places unique demands on an astronaut, particularly at the point where the spacecraft breaks away from the Earth's gravity and enters space. If the astronaut is to conduct a spacewalk, he will be entering a vacuum where he is exposed to space radiation. In view of all this, stringent requirements, both physical and psychological, have to be met by an astronaut. Following a preliminary round of selection from among the 1,500 pilots, just over 60 of them were transferred to the Air Force General Hospital for the next phase.
我们选航天员一般就是说，你首先得身体健康，没有亚内生的疾病。 再一个就是这个心理素质得有一定的达到一定的标准，还有就是生理功能，生理功能就是实际上主要是心肺储备功能，包括对这个特殊环境，像这个超重啊、失重的耐受性，有一定耐受性，就是要有一定的可训性，然后呢，再经过一些正规的、长期的训练呢，就可以达到航天的水平。
Astronauts have to be able to survive conditions more extreme than those experienced by ordinary pilots. So they have to be in excellent health, with their hearts and lungs in particular functioning perfectly. The challenges they'll face go beyond experiencing zero gravity. They must also be able to handle sudden crises with calmness and confidence. The original 60 members of the astronaut team, as they went through the various tests, became fewer and fewer. The astronaut selection program took 2 years to complete. Of the 60 candidates who originally came to Beijing, only 12 remained, including 2 trainers. The team now consisted of 14 members. And so, on January 5th, 1998, China's first ever astronaut team, the Astronauts Battalion of the People's Liberation Army, was formally established. Over the next 5 years, the astronauts went through rigorous training, experiments, and tests. They were trained to adjust their biological clocks at will and to control their bodies in a state of waking and sleeping. They were exposed to zero gravity until they no longer suffered any sickness and could maintain a sense of direction. They were also taught to keep their heart rate steady and controlled. March 2003, the China Manned Spaceflight Program Assessment Committee releases the results of the training. The 14 astronauts had all passed, having been adjudged to possess the skills and aptitudes necessary for conducting a manned spaceflight mission. In other words, the 14 team members had successfully made the transition from pilot to astronaut. Once selected, an astronaut finds himself entering a constant cycle of selection, training, selection, and so on. all 14 astronauts were granted the qualification of Grade 3 astronaut. And then another round of testing and selection began. The question now was, when China's first manned spacecraft lifted off, who would be on board?
因为航天选拔呢，就是总的原则就是8个字：好中选好，优中选优。这是总的原则，从航天进这个队伍开始就是这个原则。它这个选拔呢，包括4个方面：思想方面、训练方面、心理方面、身体方面。这4个方面的成绩都要好。所以根据每次任务的特点，根据每次任务的身体、心理这个训练或者是思想的情况，给出不同的权重，最后好中选好，优中选优，拔出适合这次任务的航天员来。
A key factor in selecting an astronaut was his suitability for a particular mission. Shenzhou 5 was China's first manned space mission. Only one astronaut would be on board the spacecraft. So the astronaut with the best psychological condition would be chosen, since he would be expected to deal with unexpected circumstances calmly and decisively. A final selection meeting for China's first person in space was held at the launch site. Taking into consideration the long-term performance of the candidate astronauts in their psychological and physiological examinations, Yang Liwei was the assessors' unanimous choice. 9 a.m., October 15th, 2003, Shenzhou 5 successfully lifts off.
6位心理素质很好，他在执行任务过程当中，从发射场从那个温泉阁出发，到进入舱里边。进入舱到点火起飞2小时45分钟，杨利伟的心率在70次上下。到点火前的10秒、5秒的时候，杨利伟沉着冷静，给大家面对镜头听了个经历，那个心率72次。到执行完任务回来，整个飞行前、飞行中、飞行后，杨利伟的心率没变化。
China's first man in space, Yang Liwei, ensured the success of his mission by maintaining calm throughout. His actions in the module demonstrated a remarkable power to maintain his psychological stability. The success of the Shenzhou 5, China's first manned space mission, demonstrated that the principles identified for choosing astronauts were the right ones. This would be shown again in the Shenzhou 6 mission 2 years later. As for Shenzhou 7, in view of the mission that would be carried out, who would be on board? The Shenzhou 7 spacecraft would carry 3 astronauts. This represented a major step forward compared with Shenzhou 5 and Shenzhou 6. 3 astronauts was the maximum design load for the spacecraft. For the first time in Chinese history, a crew member of Shenzhou 7 would conduct a spacewalk, which would place special demands on the astronaut selected. In the complex environment of space, there is always the potential for unexpected difficulties to arise. The risk of danger is significantly increased in a spacewalk, so a great deal would be expected of the astronauts on the Shenzhou 7 mission. They would have to be highly proficient in excellent health and psychologically sound. Therefore, there was considerable pressure on the selection process. Physiologically, people living on Earth have naturally adapted to the atmospheric pressure of the Earth's surface. In space, where there is no atmosphere, an astronaut attempting a spacewalk must go through a process of pressure discharge in a hyperbaric chamber before leaving the capsule. However, the rapid reduction in pressure inside the hyperbaric chamber can cause the nitrogen to separate from the body fluids and form bubbles, which can cause decompression sickness. This in turn will lead to pain in the body and joints, difficulties with breathing, and even shock.
神奇任务呢，就是针对这个特点呢，对每一个参试的航天员都进行这种减压病的易感性测试。